Lepo pozdravljeni vsi, še enkrat, torej drugič.
Good morning everybody and welcome for the second time. This presentation does not differ much from the one I gave last year. The title being Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Lifelong Learning. Let me distinguish. I do not intend to tell the fortune. The presentation aims at the provision of overview in the field of artificial intelligence and learning. So what can this bring to us in a very short period of time, not decades? This was obvious during the COVID situation when everybody had to react. Before we talked about distance learning and other trends, but all of a sudden the humanity was forced to embrace these technologies. Let me start with this slide I like showing around. This is the current situation. We are still using the model of education originating in the 17th century. Not much has changed. We have defined the norms, environment, objectives, and somehow we understand that everything that is going on is within the norm and everything else can differ. And the consequence is that we are faced with a number of challenges. Lifelong learning, for example, once we exit the traditional educational system, we are faced with a number of interesting challenges. Learning challenges being the first one. In lifelong learning, as we can observe, also when talking to others, that if you are in industry, for example, this is the necessity and not motivation. And this is a problem because the motivational model also defines the performance of such a model. Then the relevance and validity of the certificate of knowledge. In computer industry, it is like this. A new employee, somebody joining the working environment, is tested to see the knowledge, what the person can do. We do not pay much attention to certificates any longer. So this is what is being changed, and this impacts on the perception of individuals. In this COVID period, what has happened to us is that the working hours extended. We work more. We spend more time working, and the balance between private life and professional life is difficult to be achieved. So that's a lot of stress, and very often when we have to attend a training module, this takes our time up to 3 days, and you have to make it up for the time lost at work then. So this is often perceived as a burden. There are also technical challenges often discussed. A lack of digital competences is one thing, and and then difficult access to appropriate learning contents, ICT infrastructure and tools. What we do is, what we are doing right now is the transfer of the traditional conference online. The previous speaker had some interaction, which is great, but this technology could be used further so that this cooperation is enhanced and promoted. Work and job-related challenges, overburdened at people being overburdened at work, people being burned out. There is no time to attend training, and this is an important factor. Its significance has been on the increase, and something needs to be done to change this situation. And then challenges related or connected with a teacher, lecturer. If you ask a professor giving lectures in schools or at the university, they will tell you, I'm talking to the screen and I see no response. I cannot run this process the way I would love to, because there is no interaction. And this is problematic. Lack of motivation and guidance. This is also related to the first part, motivation, and this feeling of being isolated. These are the challenges of lifelong learning. Some originate from the previous period and some are new. We are opening the educational system, but keeping objectives which have not been adjusted. Consequences. We can see that the percentage of people engaged in lifelong learning is relatively low. Secondly, the other graph, more to the right, is about the decreasing interest. So if a training course takes more time, it all starts with great enthusiasm, but then this atmosphere drops and many drop out. And this graph at the bottom shows something that is not really dynamic. So these are attendees of our online services. We see how we are unable to capture the right target group. We have those permanent ones coming back again and again. And of course this is a challenge. And what we see as going into this direction is to turn this issue upside down, meaning that the educational ecosystem with the infrastructure, services, lectures, teachers, certificates, so the whole educational system is being adjusted to an individual rather than pushing an individual into the existing system. And we need a system that will make this individual satisfied, which is different from the traditional system where we tend to forget what an individual learned in the kindergarten and then preschool and primary school, secondary school, up to the point when this individual enters the labor market industry. Lifelong learning is often misunderstood. Lifelong learning captures this process of learning from birth to death. So we do not need to burden an individual, but rather motivate them. It's great to present it in a graph, but to put it into practice is something else. There are a number of different levels that we need to understand: infrastructure, content, methods and services, programs, added value, models and policies. So different levels of complexity. Infrastructure, a lot of infrastructure globally. If we could access it all, so there are more than 1.2 million of schools globally, more than 20,000 higher education institutions, 80 million of teachers. Can you imagine this wealth of knowledge and opportunities? It is true that you cannot access all this. There is no access, we are not aware of it. We cannot capture it, and of course the quantity is the next challenge. And then the dynamics. We have the traditional educational system. In some categories it is changing, and this dynamics needs to be understood in order to adjust the system to an individual. And thirdly, it's difficult to measure. How to measure the performance of motivation, of guidance? How can you identify an individual's objective aspirations? How do we recognize all this so that it can be integrated? How can we, for example, detect unwillingness? So this is a huge and complex system, difficult to manage. And for this reason, we can use artificial intelligence. It can solve some of these issues. The magic of this artificial intelligence is that it can present these complex systems so that we can understand it. Be it the world, autonomous vehicles, smart cities, these are all complex systems, too complex and too comprehensive for an individual to be able to interpret them, but artificial intelligence can present it so that a human being can interpret it. There are three elements in this educational system: a learner, teacher, and information and content. And then, of course, the learning channel. In order for this to work, we need to understand and process the information. We have to understand the learning elements, concepts, methods of learning, motivation of an individual. And once we are familiar with all that, we can perform the simultaneous personalization. And of course, I'm sure you have come across digital assistants. Maybe you have installed one or two. And the fact is that teacher will never be excluded from this equation, from this circle. Only the function of a teacher will change. But you cannot automate everything, because you will hit the challenges I listed on the first, transparency. Artificial intelligence, what's the definition? For the majority of people, this is a big black box. God forbid touching it, because it can take over the humanity. These are algorithms that can do something that we can't, that people can't do. because the perception of information is different for people compared to computers. And what the humankind is doing is using artificial intelligence to help us, not to replace us. The artificial intelligence can help us also in our daily lives. How many of you know, well, on your mobile phone you probably have some hundreds of numbers. How many of them can you reproduce, do you know, by heart? No need. This has changed everything. Is our life worse because of that? No. So this technology is helpful. It helps us. And now I will show you what it means helping people in social learning environment. What if? So this is the illustration of the sequence of steps taken by artificial intelligence. So we have images of tools. Below you have the tasks of these tools. It's in English. On the left side, we have automatic ingestion, cleaning, fusion. If we are able to automatically capture all data from all the infrastructure, the number of teachers, the number of schools, sources of the internet, if we are able to capture everything independently of the format of the language, if we can capture the information and cleanse it, and then in the second phase the information is used in order to understand the content, and this is what the artificial intelligence does. For example, Google Translate. Any content can be translated into another language, and this tool has been improved gradually and constantly. So, if we can structure the data captured and understand the ecosystem, then we can define the learning path. It can be very dynamic. You all have kids at home. Well, one day he wants to be a cook, but then the next day a scientist or an astronaut. And how do we understand this dynamics of wishes regarding education? So this is the career path, the educational path. And if this can be supported by super environment, which we can design, we are there. These are the tools already developed and are saved. So this is something that is not non-existing or subject to research. No, these are fully developed tools already employed at our institute. And now the open library of sources of education. In this first part, it's the capture of content. This is what we do. We obtain content in different languages, in different modalities, speech, video, subcoded knowledge, with some learning value. So this is capturing, then it is prepared in this second column. Additional processing is applied, either through translation, deeper understanding. We are able, in what part? Somebody explained the Pythagoras statement. based on a long video presentation.
But we can go deeper than into the content, and since we can assess this deeper content, we can say that there is a part that should be used to build the next stage, which is pre-prepared into the program. What we started doing is also the third column. Here we only have experiments, the technical part, with some experiments where we try to understand what is the quality of the content. If we list all the content, you can imagine everything is there, and how you can put it into something that how the machine can tell you what is higher quality than something else. And then the fourth part, completely unknown, how to understand the didactical value of all these materials in assessing the structural content. This is all important. If you are educators, all of you with experience of preparing learning process for the next day or for the next period, you know what the complexity is. And one possibility is that you would go online, look for content and get lost. And second possibility is that everything is pre-prepared, arranged, and this pre-prepared material, considering the type of education, target audience, some special requirements that can help you in preparing, designing your curriculum. So learning aid to the content designer, this is something that we can already provide. We started as a research project. We've selected some pilot content and we've tested it already, and now we are putting it on international level, modeling of individual people. This is what we've started doing for New York Times. The question was a lot of high complexity, a lot of contacts. They have 25 million people coming on site with 15 million articles. So how to understand what is going on, how to provide relevant content to people accessing New York Times web page. And for us, the biggest challenge, or the most interesting challenge, was the most interesting result was the first column here. Can you see my mouse? Yes, moving. The first column on the left, where I believe you have 17 types of people. In education, you don't need to observe the individuals. At the end of the day, we have groups, not endless number of people, but different groups of types of people considering their learning habits. Why this is important? Because we no longer have to deal with individuals, with safety, security, with privacy issues. The importance of personal data fades out in this case. What you need to understand is the category that individual falls into, and then you can provide all the supporting activities through the system. This was not an experiment, but this is an ongoing application that provided us a good insight into the process. And this is what we do. We then check deeper levels, what is going on in dynamics of knowledge transfer and development of individuals' skills. This is another presentation of all the data. This is the example, can you use this data and all the data that we have from the employment ads, from well-known standards, can you see the bottom-up structure and the standards of competences? This is something that we've processed with basic categories of individuals. Quite quickly, what you can make is a structural chart of competences and knowledge. And the computers can help you doing that, showing you what today are the competences that a person should obtain to perform certain job. This is the calculation of competences, a great example of one of our colleagues. This is the social chart connected to the chart of competences, and the context, if you wish to understand what is the scope of knowledge about a certain topic. It is what you have to consider, what they are working on, what they have studied, and who they are talking to. If we are working on the same project with a different domain, I will learn from you something. I don't know what or how much I would learn, but definitely I can say, well, my chart defines also knowledge, soft skills that I can acquire through the interaction with some people. This is an example, a very specific application. This is ongoing applied applications within science, presented in one system. Automatic generation of learning pathways. This is how you understand the content, how you understand the individual, and this is how you can plan the relevant learning path. This is what we've been doing for quite some time. It is limited in the scope, but still there are some learning content that the learning path with using the computers can work quite well. This is what we've done. This is an important segment, micro-credentials and qualifications, and this was an interesting experiment. Before we performed this, we made this application, we had to use AI as a support and combine existing standard of knowledge. We know that Slovenia has its own standards, UN, EU Commission have their own standards. There is no pure interaction. We are all getting lost in these standards. And what we've done, not to combine and compile all the standards, but we've transfer them. If you have some UNESCO standards, you can transfer it into another standard automatically. Through AI, you can do it quite easy and quite well. And at the end, it is important, can the countries talk to each other, can we talk to each other, so that all these things can be brought to life. The last things that I will show you, and then I will stop, is something that we call UI assistant, artificial intelligence assistance, AI assistance. This is how it is done. AI learning, focused learning. Focused learning from the internet data, testing what it has learned, and learning from people as well. This is a first example of strong symbiotic relationship. AI needs the knowledge from people, it lacks knowledge from people, and people need support of AI as well. on the other side. This is the example how you as an individual can contribute to this common library, and then Wikipedia is not an AI, it's a record of some information, but AI can understand and know what to ask. It doesn't ask all around randomly, but if they understand what knowledge you have, what competences you have, AI can ask you certain questions. You get focused questionnaire from the AI. Why that is important? If we can show the whole ecosystem and ask whether AI can understand what is the best time for me individually to learn further something more about something new, the 3-day seminar is broken into the series of micro pieces of training that are served to me at the most optimum time for my learning at 6 p.m. after I finish my recreation. I sit down and learn a micro piece of additional knowledge that I might need. These are the technological pieces that we already have here in Slovenia, and we are putting it into an ecosystem that could potentially allow us to cover the whole image. There is one problem of this comprehensive image. The problem is people hold back and keep their knowledge for themselves. We don't want to combine and compile everything that we know, everything that we can contribute, and openly share it with others. That is the main thing. Imagine that today, if we can agree that every person in the world can present an open education source, one page on one topic in a structural way. I put one page into to get 6 billion, 7 billion pages back. Is this a good investment? It's a great investment. Would it pay out? Yes. But why don't we do it? Because we are people. That is why we need AI showing us what we should share and how we could share it, and agree what should be shared. These are some additional information and sources. You can check them out. We are doing our best to put Slovenia on the map with all the centers, AI centers, projects, and it would be great if in Slovenia we could present this to the world and show them how you can do it differently, and this would be great if we could manage to do that in Slovenia. This is how I would wrap up. Thank you.